I graduated from seminary in Philadelphia, and there was a little bit of freedom there. I thought more than in the South, but my calling was to the South. That's where I come from, and it's where I had to go back to. Martin Luther King and I were in seminary at the same time. In fact, we visited each other. He at Crozier and I at the Philadelphia Divinity School. I didn't think anything about civil rights at the time. And certainly he had not come into his own as the great leader that he became. In South Carolina, there had been a brave AME pastor who had decided to use his daughter to integrate a school in South Carolina in Manning, an agricultural community where people live literally by the sweat of their brow, mostly farmers. This was the first civil rights case that led to Brown. Now, I know Brown is the title of that decision in '54 because her name from Topeka, Kansas is Brown. And so all the cases got named Brown because her name was first. But the first case brought by Thurgood Marshall was in South Carolina, and this young girl, and they put all the cases together eventually, including the one in Virginia. Well, Thurgood Marshall said he would come into South Carolina. This state had the largest NAACP group in the country, but they met in churches. So the church has, in a sense, has always been there. But when Thurgood Marshall brought that case, and this girl, it seemed like it was moving toward the Supreme Court, and they had won some decisions in the lower courts, and there had been some good white people in this movement. A guy named Warren was a respected judge in Charleston, South Carolina, and he got read out of the white race because he stood up and said that the Democratic Party, and all white people in the South were Democrats then. He said the Democratic Party was not a private club because it elected people to public office, therefore it had to admit African Americans. And that was one of the first cases. Warren, he had to be a very strong man to do that in Charleston, South Carolina. So when I went back to the South, this is the South I knew, where the NAACP had made tremendous progress in South Carolina. But because that suit, all hell broke loose. I mean, Strom Thurmond was elected on a write-in ballot. Man wasn't even on the ballot. He had to write his name in, and he was elected senator and one of the strongest segregationists who ever lived. I went to school with his daughter at South Carolina State. That's part of that history also. But when I came to Norfolk, I had come out of the civil rights movement in North Carolina, where Jesse Jackson had started at Woolworth Citians. Well, he did that one week. The next week, the kids in Shaw and St. Augustine were sitting at counters and being refused. I was the chaplain at the chapel in St. Augustine's, and all of a sudden there was a transformation of the chapel. All the songs in the civil rights movement were practiced there. And then the students would go out on the street, join with the Shaw University Street, and march up and down the streets of Raleigh, standing in front of restaurants demanding that they be open, going before the state legislature in North Carolina, demanding that they do something to change the situation. Thinking over this, and I'm sorry I'm taking this time, I had forgotten what songs we used to sing. But students would go up to a restaurant and sing, "I'm going to sit at the welcome table one of these days." Wow. And they just stand in front of the restaurant and sing, "I'm going to sit at the welcome table one of these days." My wife wrote these out for me. She was a part of this movement from the beginning, me and my family. When they would throw rocks at us and spit on us, and they did, students were not nonviolent by nature, but we had to practice, and we had a lot of teaching to do to get them to accept this principle. But they did. And I said, they led in Raleigh the civil rights movement. Shaw University students, St. Augustine students, and one or two white students from North Carolina State would join them every evening, that they would march down the town, and the city got sick of them. So they put some of them in jail. But they took that as part of the movement. Then I came to Norfolk. But before I settled in, I went to Washington, D.C. to join the March on Washington and heard for the first time the great sermon by Martin Luther King, "We Shall Overcome." You know, I thank God for that man, because he was a powerful preacher. I mean, he would have you sitting in here ready to go out and march anywhere. He had that power. And he stuck to what he had promised. This is a righteous movement. The church. This is a righteous movement. And it is a nonviolent movement. In Albany, when they got beat up so badly, they begged him, said, we can't take this anymore. He said, no, this is going to be a movement of nonviolence. He was powerful enough to stick to it, and it's the only thing that saved us. If we had bullets for bullets, you know what would have happened. You know what would have happened. You know who had all the bullets, all the laws and everything else. But he said this is a righteous movement, and it would be nonviolent. So I came here believing that, and met the pastor of New Calvary Baptist Church, Milton Reed, who had formed an SEL chapter here. I joined the SEL chapter right away, and also joined the NAACP. And they kind of loggerheads, because they said, you know, we need to take everything by law. And Martin Luther King said, let's go at it, let them, you know, in their face. We went downtown in front of the federal building. You see some pictures in there, students going into the Y. And here I am down there praying for the opening of the Y. My daughter's with me, wife and son. And it took a while for that to happen. Now, I go into the blocker now and exercise every day. And nobody knows that at one time didn't admit us, forbid us to come in. I'm gonna let you speak, and then I'm gonna come back and talk a little bit about the desegregation. I'm sorry.